And we are live. Hi everyone, I'm Angela Fair and welcome back. This is week 6 of Watercolor Mastery. This is our final recap. And if you're like me, you're can't believe it's over already, even though the last 6 weeks have been kind of intense and very busy, as I know you're just like me trying to scramble to fit painting in with everything else that's happening in your life. We're going to get started here. If I'm hoping you can all see and hear me. And I'm going to grab my notes. I don't know if you could hear my metaphorical tires screeching as I rushed into the studio today. I had a hair appointment this morning. Yes, my hairdresser straightened it. Nancy says it looks so different. Yeah, I got some highlights put in to kind of hide some of the gray. I have this huge patch of gray that is, yeah, we'll just cover it up right there. So the hairdresser fixed it so I don't have to have my hand over my head anymore. And I'm headed off to Edmonton to teach a workshop. So I always like to get my hair done in preparation for going out in public and meeting some of my watercolor students face to face, although I know you've already seen my face. I'm excited about going to teach an in-person workshop after these last 6 weeks spent with you, because I know that every time I teach watercolor, I become a better instructor, which benefits my students. So, and one of the reasons I become a better instructor is that there is something so beneficial in interacting and hearing, not just giving and teaching, but receiving from you your feedback, and not just your feedback, but hearing your questions, observing common problems and things that you struggle with, and being able to kind of engage more deeply than if I'm just trying to imagine it in my mind and anticipate as I'm preparing a course. So we're gonna, yeah, so it's just exciting to now, having had that almost not quite in-person experience with you, to be able to go to Edmonton and spend 2 days teaching at a workshop there. I have students coming from the Edmonton area, which is about, it's a city 6 hours south of me. It's probably my nearest big city. And Edmonton, of course, is the home of the famous Edmonton Oilers hockey team, of which my dad is very passionate and proud. And so we're all Oilers fans. But it's also where we go when we want to get some good shopping done, because really we don't have a lot up here in the north. And I love visiting the art supply stores in Edmonton. There's 3 that I like and visit, and three, I think. And I'll be teaching at the Paint Spots studio, which is in downtown Edmonton. And I know Anne, who's been a part of our watercolor mastery course, will be there. And I'm not sure if you're the only one, Anne, or if I have other mastery students that I'll be getting to meet in that workshop, but I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm also looking forward to giving away one of my workshop kits today. When I teach a workshop in person, I always try to bring a goodie box for my students. It was a habit I picked up when I used to teach and be involved in scrapbooking, and scrapbooking always has product samples and little goodie bags for students, and I thought it was a shame that watercolor and artists didn't do that as well. So I always try to bring a goodie bag, thinking about things that my students might use and products they might not have tried yet. And sometimes it is stuff they have, but it's just a little bonus. And my goodie boxes that I bring to my workshops generally are valued about $80 US. And so I'm giving one of those away today to one randomly selected winner. And I'm going to be revealing her name just in a few minutes. If you would like to actually get your hands on a workshop box, you don't have to be randomly selected. You could try joining one of my workshops. I do have a few spaces left for my Ireland workshop, which is going to be 6 wonderful days of painting in Ireland, touring the countryside, and spending time and getting to know each other. And that's September 10th to 15th, 2018. There are links to information on that on my website at angelafair.com, or you can just email me and ask. I'm happy to share info on that. I wanted to remind you as well, we are wrapping up this course, which means the interactive part of the course is going to be ending very soon. This is our last weekly recap. But then I do plan to keep the discussion group open a little beyond this time period. So what we're going to do is keep the discussion going until June the 4th. I'm teaching my Edmonton workshop right up until those dates. And so I figured I might as well just come home and then quietly close the recap or the discussion groups at that time. So you have until June the 5th, to be able to continue to interact and engage and comment in the student discussion groups for Watercolor Mastery. You do maintain lifetime access to the recaps and the discussion group. I'm going to send out an email with links to that because they will be in a different location so that they're not publicly accessible to the future workshop or Watercolor Mastery students, if that makes sense. And you can maintain lifetime access to Watercolor Mastery. So you'll be seeing, you'll still be able to log in and see the lessons just as the way you always have. I find it's really beneficial to rewatch lessons because as you grow as an artist, things that were flying over your head previously, as you grow, you get taller. So those things start hitting you right between the eyes, getting into your brain, and then coming out on your brush. And I think we could think of that as kind of a trickle-down effect. We learn stuff, it trickles down because it has to come out our hands. It has to touch our heart as well. So if you're thinking about that, maybe that will help you be a little bit more patient if you're struggling with patience in seeing your thoughts come out on paper. You got to let that trickle down happen. And I think some of us, our trickle is a little slower than others. Sometimes I feel like a really slow learner, and I know you're not seeing that, but I know there's really times where I feel like it takes so long for what's in here to come out. And as I start to sense an inner change or an inner desire to do more, it takes time for that to be able to come out onto my paper. So keep that in mind and just be patient. That's my biggest word of advice to you, is have patience with yourself, because if it's in here somewhere, it's going to eventually come out, but sometimes it's a battle to let that happen. I also, let's see here. Oh, I'm also going to be sending you an email, not just with the links to the discussion group and the recaps, but also with information on how you can submit a testimonial. If you found this course valuable, I'd like to know why and how. And if you see areas where you think I could improve or where I could deliver my content in a more appealing way, or whatever advice you want to share, I'd love to hear that as well. So I'm going to be sending you information on how you can do that. For a testimony to be really useful to me, to be able to guide other students, I like to always kind of give a couple of thoughtful questions that I ask, so that you can make sure you're able to explain exactly what you liked and disliked about the course. And then I'd want to talk here in just a moment about this idea of that next step, which is kind of what we've looked at here in week 6. I'm trying to show you how I develop a painting into a serious painting. I'd love to find a better term for it than serious painting, but I think you all know what I mean. We doodle around, and then at some point we want to say, okay, we want to be intentional and move from, do something that we want to frame and show as a complete painting. And some of what we've been doing in our warm-ups and studies just wouldn't ever kind of reach that status of serious painting, frameable quality. And other things that we do kind of accidentally land in that frameable category as we work on them. And some of that's in how we begin, because if we're just sketching a part of something, if it has a nice background, then maybe we feel like it's more frameable than if it's just on blank paper. And there's some of that happens as well. So sometimes we have serious paintings that come out from an accident, from a warm-up, and other times we do want to be intentional. And that's kind of what I tried to show you here in week 6, is saying, here I have a warm-up that I worked on that I really liked. I see a composition that I can apply now to a larger painting. And then I went really big for you. And I wanted to say that please don't feel pressured that you need to also paint really big. That's not a requirement. And I mentioned this in the discussion group. There are a number of artists I really admire who have successfully built a name for themselves, and their paintings really never are larger than like a quarter sheet, which is 11 by 15 inches. And so if you're painting more smaller, if you're painting in a more diminutive size, that's okay. With watercolor, it's very acceptable. Linda Kemp, who I much admire, when she was doing watercolor, I'm not sure what her size what her size of painting is now because she's more an acrylic artist. But when she was doing watercolors, a lot of her watercolors were like 11 inches square, so less than a foot. And so when you're painting, you don't have to paint larger for it to be a serious painting, for it to be something someone would take seriously. And Nancy comments, I think if we paint big, it should be on good quality paper. I agree with that, Nancy. It's a challenge to upsize your painting to begin with. So then if you've added in the additional challenge of difficult paper, that can make it doubly hard. Okay, one thing I don't know how well, and I need to watch the lessons again, really, from week 6. I've gone through them a couple of times, but I'm not sure how well I express this idea of what is most important if you're going to go larger is having a dynamic composition, having a composition that works. If you like your subject matter, but the composition's a little wishy-washy, you want to really focus on seeing deeper than just the subject matter and looking at the composition. Where are your patterns of darks and lights? How is the viewer going to experience and move through the painting? That's foundational to creating a painting that is something people want to look at and look at longer. So we do look for when I talk about stuff like there's a long vertical and there's a dark, this dark pattern, and I'm echoing that dark pattern over here, that's all compositional related. So when I'm thinking about how my viewer experiences the painting, those contrasts as being even more important than the subject matter. And I want to bolster those contrasts as I paint and increase the size. So it's not necessarily that you need to add more detail. It's just that you want to make sure you have a strong composition from the outset. Okay, moving on. I feel like I don't pause enough. I want to show you just here for a moment. I usually show you student work from the previous week, and I'm kind of going to do that and kind of not. What I want to show you actually is some student work. I had a couple of students in the discussion group, and all of you are welcome to do this, who posted pictures of all of the paintings they've been working on or have completed over the 6 weeks of the course. And it was really neat to see the volume of work. You guys have been so dedicated and so productive. I'm so proud of you. And even if they haven't been finished and haven't turned out to your liking, seeing that body of work in a group like that, even if you don't post it in the discussion group, it's so beneficial because it helps you to see how far you've come. It helps you to see that you have been investing in your watercolor skills and abilities. And it helps you to hopefully feel encouraged and motivated to see some progress from start to finish. And I know I've said this previously, the better our skills are, the stronger we become technically, the harder it is to see our progress because the growth is going to be that much more minimal. Just like a baby starts at 7 pounds and by the first birthday they've doubled their size or whatever. I had some chubby kids. We see great growth, and then by the time they're, my teenagers' ages, you might be measuring a ½ an inch of growth a year, and then then it starts to change entirely. But we don't expect the same rate of growth as the maturity starts to develop. So I want you to remember that and be patient with yourself as you think about that concept. We're going to just flip over here and take a look at a couple of students and their bodies of work just quickly here. If I can make my computer obey me. Switch, there we go. This is Beth. Beth posted, I love how you used your staircase. It was a gallery. It does eliminate access to your studio space. But look at how many lovely pieces have occurred. And I think some of those, I don't know if we saw all of those in the discussion group posted, Beth, but I really love the outcome. I like seeing the consistency of your style. Even though you're being experimental, we can still pretty easily identify most of these as being by the same artist. And over here, I believe this was Nina's. Should have double checked the name. And again, a wonderful collection of multiple pieces. And actually, no, that's not Nina's. Anne, is that yours? I apologize for not writing your name down. That was my mistake. Pop up and tell me it was yours if I if I haven't gotten your name right yet. I want to just point out again the quantity of work here. That's a very definite sign that growth is taking place, that you are actively investing in growing those skills. And I'm just really proud of you for doing that. And thank you for showing us as well. And I use this picture to help encourage you and motivate you when you start to feel like you might not have be getting anywhere or spinning your wheels. It's really not true at all. Quickly moving back, here's my work surface. Think I've got my screens in order again. There we go. Yes, Anne, good. I got your name right the second time. I apologize there. The other thing I wanted to, oh, Angie says, I feel like a slacker. Please don't feel like a slacker, Angie. I recognize that not all of us have the time to dedicate as much. Not all of us can dedicate that much time to our painting, and that's okay too. I did a lot of growth in my painting. It was in the years when my children were small, and my painting periods were probably, I might have at the very most got an hour a week, probably more like an hour a month. And, you do what you can with what you have, and you make peace with the rest. And it's totally okay to I really believe in no guilt painting. We are not going to do something if we're feeling guilty about it. And I'm speaking to you and staring at the screen in a heartfelt way, and yet you're seeing my work surface. So I'm wasting all my facial expressions. If you want to go through these lessons again, I encourage you to do so. I wanted to actually, I'm going to go back to my camera here because I'm going to tell you about it. I was going to just email the students who hadn't actively participated, but I'm going to tell all of you. Something I wanted to do as we open up for round 2 for a second crop of students to take this course again is I don't want to see this course wasted. And so, and I know how easy it is to buy a course, an online course with really good intentions of going through it, and yet just never manage to carve out the time. And so I didn't want that to be, you get one chance to take the interactive part of the course and that's it. So for this second round, and we'll see how it goes, I might try to offer this all the time. But if you want to go through the lessons of the course, with me and the interactive part, and you haven't done so previously, I can open that up for you so that you get the emails with this new crop of students and you're able to participate in the discussion group. I wanted to make that available, and hopefully I think that it will work well. If I had too many people taking me up on the offer and just got flooded with interaction, then I might have to kind of start limiting it. But I think we're okay. I think we should be able to have it possible so that you can go through the second round with the interactive portion if you haven't done so already. So I want to encourage you to make that time so that you can go through the class and feel this same kind of fired up freedom that you're hearing from the other students in the group, in the discussion group, and here in the chat. There also is, I know you're going to miss the interactivity of this group and this kind of community feeling that we've created. I really feel like we've built relationships and that we know each other just through sharing our paintings and sharing a little insights into our lives. Often we get to see each other's lives just through our paintings and through the subject matter that we're using. And we can continue that in my Facebook group, Angela Fair Watercolor Workshop. I'm not as active there just because of the size of the membership. I'm not as active there. I can't comment on everything, but I am checking in, and I do love seeing how you all support one another and how those connections that are made during a course are able to continue in the Facebook group. So do keep that in mind. That you can post your work. And if you're posting work from Watercolor Mastery, absolutely feel free to mention that this is from the course and that that's something you've learned from the course. Obviously, I don't want you to give away all my secrets, but by sharing that you're working on stuff that was inspired by Watercolor Mastery, it helps encourage other students who might be hesitant about taking the same leap. And so I really like you doing a little free advertising for me. Okay, we're going to move over to my work surface now. because I was at my hairdresser today, I actually ended up doing a lot of visiting and talking. I actually just had a text from my hairdresser thanking me for the visit. So I'm a little parched. I just needed a sip of water. So we'll paint for as long as I have voice. Okay. Oh yes, and Anna says we do have Instagram that we can share on as well if you're not on Facebook. Anything you tag Angela Fair, I see, and you know, it can also help link up and show that we have this network of students who are sharing in this really empowering style of an approach to watercolor. I think it's something we just can't stop talking about, is how we can feel free to paint in a way that makes us so happy and satisfied. Okay, now I wanted to just come to my paper today without a plan, really. Oh, I will show you a little thing I've been working on. This is just a little study of the view outside my studio window right now. This giant aspen tree is right beside my shed. I actually have a driveway here, and which I just kind of covered with green. And then the trees, and on the other side there's a distant field where my dog likes to look for mice and bark at deer and coyotes and so forth. So I've been having fun painting that, and I think you probably recognize some of the techniques we've used in our course. And this is actually using Shinhan Premium, Shinhan Professional watercolor paints, which I'm going to mist here. And I like these paints if you're feeling like you want to expand your palette but don't want to spend a lot of money. Shinhan is a good value for the money, and I'm seeing lots of beautiful vibrance and saturation from the pigments, which makes me quite happy. And what I was thinking about today is the fact that we really love to see results. And so, you know, we like to line up our paintings and see our finished collection. See, that's the red violet. Isn't that beautiful? We like to see, you know, something accomplished. We like to have something we can measure. And yet, when we're talking about developing personal style, I think we have to let go of our desire to measure our progress, because where personal style comes out is really something that arises out of our emotions. And so a lot of times when you're striving for perfection, for a beautiful finished painting, you're forgetting to paint what makes you most joyful. And so when you're noodling around, or puddling around, I think is a better way to put it, in watercolor, really we're painting for the joy of it. We're just kind of seeing what happens, kind of exploring some possibilities. And if we see something that makes us happy, we try to find a way to do more of it. And that's where our style gets the opportunity to emerge, because it's those things that make us happy that make up the most intrinsic part of ourselves and our style. And so that thing that feels so unproductive, that puddling, and I just spit on my paper, so I got a little extra moisture there. That puddling is what causes us to really be able to have that strength of expression down the road. So it's never a waste. And in fact, you could probably just continue. You know what that is? That's an iris. Look at the ruffly edge right there. I'm not sure why it has a blue and purple background, but it's just appeared. Yeah, that's pretty. So as we paint without regard for the outcome, it is the key to developing our personal style. I think without it, we're not nearly as in tune with the elements of painting that bring us the most joy. And so if you want to think about painting from your heart, it has to be found in that painting with joy, with emotion, and with passion. And that's going to come from, yeah, what makes you happy. And I don't know about you, but when I met my husband, I had a boyfriend before that. Now I'm getting really personal. And, you know, people tell you when you meet the right one, you just know. And if you've dated people before that, you think you know. But then when you meet the right person, you really know. And you just, you know, it becomes easier. And there's something that's just so much clearer. And I think we get that same kind of clarity when we find the one, you know, our style and our voice in painting. And look at that iris just starting to appear there. It's going to be a white iris. And it's the perfect time of year to be thinking about irises. And there's one down here too, I think. But it had a little bit of pink creep into it. I don't know if that makes sense to you, that idea of being in tune to that inner part that just says yes. But those little moments when you feel that, they're so satisfying. And so yeah, we're gonna think of it that way. I'm gonna just give myself a stem now, just that. And I think I'll need another iris over here if I want it to look balanced. So that makes me, you know, that might start to make me feel tied or pressured to something. And I was originally painting clouds in my mind, so you know, this is actually a departure from what I usually would, which direction I would usually go in my painting. I've used so far in the Shinhan Professional watercolors the red violet, that lovely vibrant. It's more red than purple and more purple than magenta, I think is the way to go on there. Way to describe it. And the ultramarine is the other, and then there's a yellow green. Some of the Shinhan Professional colors, I would actually encourage you to go with their premium line, because the premium are actually better than the professional, which was confusing to me when I ordered, or I would have ordered the one that was marketed as their best brand. I should have researched better. I'll be giving away some of these Shinhan watercolors on my YouTube channel in the next couple of weeks, I think. It's my goal. I don't really want to have just some simple stems here, so I'm actually going to fill this up with yellow-green right now. And that will create a bit of a background with a little bit of white space in behind, because that will balance out the white space of the irises, I think. That's kind of pretty, isn't it? Just taking a look. Oh, here's some comments about, I'm just taking a look at your comments, making sure I'm not missing anything. I'm just curious about how you all are connecting with that inner self. Have you been able to feel it come out a little bit more freely? I know I've heard some comments to that effect in the discussion group. And does it come out more easily when you're painting without regards for the outcome? When you're just puddling around? My very good friend Judy Templeton is a watercolor artist. And I haven't actually told Judy this, and she might be watching, so hi Judy. When I first got to know Judy, we took an art workshop together, and she was filling page after page. She had so many paintings she was doing because she was filling page after page with wet and wet washes. And she would fill a page with paint and then sprinkle water on and look for patterns and then set it aside. And to me, they all looked completely unfinished. And I just thought, you know, those aren't real paintings. Sorry, Judy. This is my secret thought. And then down the road, I just didn't understand it, but it was all very zen for Judy. And she was so joyful in the process that I had to admire her ability to be so at peace with what she was creating without that urge that I had to always do something that was kind of more and perfect and, you know, like a serious painting. And you know, she was much more connected to the joy of the process at that time than I was. Well, I think you probably still are, Judy, if you're watching. And but over the years, I didn't see Judy for a couple of years. We don't live in the same town. And, you know, a few years later, I saw some of her work in a local gallery. And it was so cool to see, because Judy's abilities, her skills, despite the fact that she was just puddling around all the time, her skills, her ability to anticipate what watercolor would do and gently direct it, all of those things had emerged through her process of just playing and puddling. And while I was striving to master technique in a much more focused and intentional way, both of us, in our own ways, were growing. And it's really neat to see that. And it helped me to be a more confident instructor, because I can then encourage you as you're working on your own style and growing, that there doesn't need to be any guilt. You do get to learn to paint and to express your style in your own way. And it doesn't have to be all zen or all work. You kind of find your own little place in the middle, and that is a good thing, because we learn in a way that makes us more satisfied, more connected to our work. Oh, this is pretty. I'm carrying the ultramarine blue down into my yellow green, and you can see how that balances the painting and combines the two halves of the scene. This is really fun. Sorry, I'm just kind of playing now. I might forget that I'm on camera and just fall into my painting. I was just thinking a little negative painting over here might be really pretty. And I haven't looked at irises lately, so my paintings are this particular painting might be a little impressionistic. They don't bloom here for quite a while yet. I think I saw the first shoots of my irises popping up. Hopefully I think that was them if they survived the winter. And so they'll be probably at least a month before I see any irises blooming in Dawson Creek. So you can see now by using negative space, I have created, oh, that's really pretty. Add a little yellow green in there. It's a little bit opaque, so it does flow on top of the royal blue, the ultramarine. Ultramaroon. So now I'm quoting Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck. Something that I learned was, and I've been trying to encourage you, I haven't used a pencil a lot in the series of this course, and one thing that it's done is it's given me that ability to paint something like this, to do that negative painting without feeling like all my steps needed to be spelled out. I said there was a third iris down here, and it's kind of gotten lost in the underlying first wash. So I'm just going to kind of carve out a little shape on the edge here. But I'm actually going to just let it be for now and let my first layer kind of speak for itself. I might still come back in and hint at that later. One thing I want to point out about the Shinhan watercolors is I do feel like there's a little bit more capacity for blooms. You can see up here there's quite a line. I actually like that textural line for this content, for this subject matter. I don't have any blue down here. I'm going to add a little bit. And but I do see that it does seem like the pigment, I think it's just sitting on the surface just a little bit more, because blooms generally come from the pigment moving when that imbalance of water comes into play. So I think that's where our bloom is coming from. And where that capacity to bloom is that the pigment just does sit on the surface a little bit longer or a little bit more. And some pigments will reactivate more than others, so that when you layer over top of them, they might start to move again as well. I'm still getting to know these Shinhan pigments and exactly what they do, but I haven't felt like I've needed to change my working method to adapt to this paint. I'm using it just the same as I would with others, and I'm finding, as you can see, the colors are beautifully vibrant. I'm definitely not losing anything there by using this Shinhan Professional. There are a few colors, I was going to say earlier, the cerulean hue, which is a hue and not the actual true pigment. And so that's where you often see with paint that they will substitute for some of the more pricey, expensive colors, that they'll substitute and they'll call it a hue instead of the actual true pigment. And that's probably not the technical description, but this is the best you're going to get. Okay, gonna stop. I love the whiteness of these irises right now. They probably could use, I maybe could go in and put some shadow shapes to delineate the different petals. But I also like suggesting things and leaving some things unsaid. So I might just keep it that way, just because I like that pristine whiteness so much. I'm going to soften this area because it was feeling too crisp there. And that's also going to blend my violet and blue into my green and blue, which I think will help connect the two parts of the painting, as I mentioned earlier. I'm going to take a look at your comments here just for a moment, and you can take a look at my painting as it starts to dry and make sure I'm caught up here. Oh, I hear comments on getting rid of the inner critic queen. Yes, off with her head. Definitely we have to learn how to silence that inner critic, because she will take over, and if we let her. And I don't know why we have to have that inner voice that just wants to spoil all our fun, but I really do. I mean, one reason I give you so many pep talks is that I'm always giving them to myself. I really try to be kind of in denial about any kind of negative feelings I'm having or struggles that are going on. I don't give them real estate in my mind. You're right about the Facebook group. It's not as connected, and it is quite public because I have it open to anybody with an interest in my artwork and my classes. So that is a drawback. I agree. Taking a look here at your comments, just making sure, feel free if you have any questions to ask, you can do that right now. Terry comments, I'm amazed that you can paint irises without a reference photo. I've painted flowers many times, and irises, I'd say this is at least my, let me think here. Oh yeah, I've probably painted irises at least a dozen times. I really love flowers, and when you, for many years when I was first painting, I did almost exclusively florals. And so for me to paint a flower, I kind of try to simplify it down to the basic shapes. And I paint them for the love of it. So yeah, I think that's where it's coming out of. Diane says, I love sprinkling water and dropping in pigment. I find great joy in finding shapes and ideas to develop. It's lots of fun and mind stretching for me. Yes, I think so. That idea of just, and I love dropping in color and letting it flow. And you can see that in how I paint and what I approach. Elizabeth says, I finally felt free to play with paint and colors. It makes me feel so much more in tune with what the paints can do. And I love hearing that you're painting more in the moment, like Nina says, and enjoying color more. That's exciting. Nancy says, I find when I allow myself to throw things away, it's very freeing. I don't have to expect anything, and it's only paper. Nancy, I like hearing that. I think sometimes we think that throwing paintings away is a negative thing, but it doesn't have to be. I like to keep paintings because, you know, for quite a while, I do throw things away, but I tend to want to save and hang on to and then edit what I throw away. So I'll put a pile, I'll have a pile of things that I don't think are good enough to frame, but possibly I might find a better way to fix them down the road, or, you know, something I can do with them to make them better. Or maybe I want to crop them and make them into bookmarks or gift card or note cards. So I do hang on to stuff, and then eventually I'm just like, you know what, this brings me no happiness anymore, and I'm going to pitch it. It's done its job. And so you can feel free to feel that way. Sarah comments, I haven't found my style either, but I feel like I'm getting closer to finding it. I think finding your style is continually, happening, because what we want, we're always maturing, we're always changing, and what we all want to say is always changing as we become better. And so, you know, I like seeing artists, there's some professional artists I know who like to rework paintings. Carol Carter just posted recently, she's a Florida artist, and she just recently posted and shared a picture of a painting she had edited. She reworked, and most of her paintings are very light, full of light. And so Carol had taken one and added a dark background to make it pop. And it was so cool to see. It was beautiful. And it's also very freeing to realize that even professional artists will take something even out of the frame and repurpose it and change it up. Shirley says, this has been a negative week. I didn't post one thing, but I've done some of the assignments and nothing seemed to work. I wanted to address that because I had a couple of students on the discussion group actually talking about this idea of, all of a sudden the mojo's gone. And that's okay. Shirley, if you're feeling that way, I don't blame you. When we look at what we've done in the last 6 weeks, I think we should all be starting to feel a little bit fatigued. And, you need that time to process what you've been learning. And sometimes that means taking a step back and even going back into a comfortable place, going back to paint something that, you've painted many times before, or paint in a style that is familiar and safe. We don't always have to stretch our boundaries. I homeschooled my children for many years. They've been in school for the last couple of years, but when we were homeschooling, I love learning. I love English. I'm a big reader, and math became really exciting for me as I taught it with them because I was getting better at math. And I like seeing things, I love math because you do the steps and you have this beautiful outcome when you do it right. And so having, working with my kids, I always wanted to challenge them. And yet after maybe the first year or two, I started to realize that if I was pushing them to challenge them all the time and to teach them how to challenge themselves, learning would never be fun. It would never feel easy. And when something feels easy and you're excited because you feel good at something, that's when you actually are more willing to be challenged because you're like, I can do this. So I had to learn to let my children kind of find their way a little bit. And I had to learn how to let them coast a little bit once in a while too. And I think we need to do that as well. Arda comments, your style would be changing too as you grow. And that is very true. We don't stay in one place. And we're totally allowed. And if you want inspiration from a master, look at Picasso. He was it was interesting for me because I was learning about him with my students, and we would look at art from like the 1920s, and he had this vast diversity of styles that he was pursuing in the 20s. It wasn't just that this was his Cubist period and then he went into this other period and here he was working on just mosaics. He really was very broad in the things he was trying and experimenting with, so much so that you didn't always notice that it was by the same artist. And so we can feel free to be very experimental and be interested in different styles. We don't have to pigeonhole our style into one area. I wanted to, I know, Nancy, you're talking about paintings, and I think that's, I think your mother's legacy. Yeah, and I just want to read this in case you're not able to see the comments. Nancy says, my mother was a professional artist, and at the end of her life, she was so worried about the bad paintings she left for us, and I feel the weight of that still. She had many wonderful paintings, but she had so much worry about leaving it all as a burden to us. Hundreds of oils and thousands on paper, mostly good. What do you do with them? She painted and sold many right up to her death at 96. Truthfully, I do feel a little bit of that fear myself. I would hate for my art to be a burden to my family when I'm gone. And I don't want it to be a burden to me even, as I'm producing. And if there's older pieces that I haven't sold but are still good, what do I do with them? And there's no guarantee you're going to become so famous or well-known that you warrant an entire gallery dedicated to you or a foundation dedicated to preserving your work. So it's a difficult proposition that you have, Nancy. I'm not really sure what the answer is. But I don't think that, I personally, I wouldn't want my family to be burdened either. And I wouldn't want my legacy to be too closely tied to my paintings, I have more things than that to leave. One day I'm going to have, I have my family. I have the opportunity to teach and share a perspective on art with you that I hope would outlast any of my paintings down the road. And of course, again, my family and my relationships that I've had in this life, I want those things to be more valuable than my paintings ever could be. And if that means some of my art ends up forgotten in a shed or in a bin somewhere, I want what I have to contribute to be more than just paper. So there's that thought, and I don't know how that influences or affects how we handle someone else's legacy. And I have a grandma who's got a shed full of paintings as well, and family members with art from my grandma. And actually, when my husband's grandma passed away, one of the paintings I'd given to her has now come back into my collection. I'm not really sure what to do with that either. Definitely we treasure our memories, and I think that's where a painting's true value is in the memories we attach to it. And when I sell a piece of art, and I think we're probably getting a little off topic here, and we should wrap up for the day. So if you do have any more questions, feel free to leave them in the comments, and I'll try to answer them. But I think if I sell a piece of art, it's not because it's the most beautiful painting of all time. It's because something in the buyer connected to that painting in a personal way. There's a memory there, there's an emotion that brings that painting to life inside of them. And you know, there's my own memories and emotions about that piece that brought it to life in the first place. That's an amazing connection. And that's something that's much more, you can't see it. And I think that's why we love art, is because it makes those intangible things that we feel in our hearts actually visible. Isn't that a wonderful thought? That's why we talk so much about finding your style and letting that inner self come out, because that's a way of making something intangible visible, and tangible and accessible, and something we can hold and connect to. Amazing. It's really amazing. Oh, I didn't give our winner's name. Okay. So we do need to wrap up before I get too rambly about these emotional issues, which are very dear to my heart. Thank you for bringing that up, Nancy. That gives us the opportunity to talk about this. It's a wonderful way to kind of wrap up this course, actually, even though I don't really have a good answer for you. I did draw a winner at random from our watercolor mastery students. Barbara Lopez, send me your address and I'm going to send you the same goodie box that my students in Edmonton will be getting this weekend. I'm excited to wrap that up and send it out to you. And yes, congratulations is well due and overdue to all of you. Thank you so much for coming on this journey with me. I use the word journey a lot, and there was, I watched a video of an artist who was saying she would never use the word journey because it's so cliche. But I really see the parallels to this walk of life that we do, to our journey and our experience in watercolor. And this is one of those journeys that doesn't have a destination. Really, there's no end point. We're moving in a direction, we're climbing a mountain, but it doesn't have to ever end. And that's a really joyful thing to think about. Do plan to revisit the lessons. You don't have to do them in order. Just do what you want. Guilt-free painting means going in, you know, being as haphazard as you'd like to be, and finding a way that works for you. You do your best learning when it's kind of self-motivated and encouraged by looking at your own progress, driving yourself in a way that you feel comfortable with. Veronica's asking, how do we sign up for the second watercolor mastery course? If you weren't able to participate this go around and would like to participate in the next one, just send me an email, info@angelafair.com. You can reply to your emails that you get from me, and it'll come to my box and I will put you on the list. Yes, the discussion groups will remain open until June the 5th. So feel free to continue to interact and comment there. I will try to check in, if not every day. I'll be dialing it back a little bit because I've got my trip coming up here. But at least every couple of days or so, I'll be checking in. I want to see how you kind of close out your course. And I'd love to see if you do have the project paintings, if you want to put them all into a group and take a picture for us. I'd love to see that as well. Post that in the group. And you'll be getting an email from me with a follow-up. I have a document I'm working on for kind of a week 7. So you want to show your work kind of information on what you might want to do to take some steps towards showing your work publicly, pursuing maybe sales or shows as a professional artist or a semi-professional artist, whatever you want to call it, someone who's presenting their art to the world. And I have some things that I've learned over my many years of trying to make a living selling art. And so I will be sharing that with you in a few days. So thank you so much. It's been a little bit embarrassing to check into the discussion groups because you're some of the wonderful things you've been saying, it's making me blush. It's really exciting, so exciting to see how this course has been received and to see how it has helped you as you've worked on this difficult to pin down concept of thinking like an artist, embracing your journey to mastery. And it really is kind of taking ownership of your own journey. And I love seeing it happen in your lives and seeing those lights come on. So congratulations. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you and interact with you soon. A reminder, if you want to join a workshop with me, I do post all event information on my website at angelafair.com. There's, excuse me, not a lot there right now. But hopefully I'll have a 2019 schedule in the works for fall. Okay, bye for now.